The Deep Dive, unearthing the truth like an info Indiana Jones. Forget just another podcast. The Deep Dive is now a full-blown treasure hunt for truth, blasting through layers of deception, myth, and buried history. No whip, no fedora, just raw intellectual adrenaline, chiseling away at the stone walls of lies to expose the relics of reality. We're not just talking, we're digging, hacking, and cracking open the past like digital archaeologists. Lost documents, hidden agendas, forgotten evidence? Consider them X's on our treasure map. Every episode is a high-stakes excavation where the truth isn't handed to you. It's dug up, dusted off, and held to the light. The past is a battleground. The truth is the prize. And the deep dive? We're the ones pulling it from the rubble.
I want you to take a second and just think about the headlines you scrolled past this morning.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It really is. Here we are. I mean, it's April 2026, and looking at the news feels incredibly heavy right now.
Definitely.
We're constantly bombarded with ongoing wars, massive economic crises, severe inflation, and, lingering pandemics.
Right.
And when you look at all of that, how do you even make sense of it? Like, do you see random chaotic events just crashing into each other?
Those people probably do, yeah.
Right. Or do you see a checklist, a highly specific sequence of events leading up to a defined climax?
It is deeply ingrained in human nature to want to find a pattern in the chaos. We're wired to seek order, but it becomes an entirely different phenomenon when millions of people look at that exact same chaos and see a confirmed step-by-step roadmap playing out in real time.
Exactly. And that roadmap is what we are unpacking for you today in this deep dive. We are exploring a fascinating, highly detailed prophetic timeline believed by Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right, mapping out how they view the end of the current world system.
Yes, and I want to be super clear right up front. To figure this out, we're acting purely as guides today.
Absolutely neutral.
Yes, we aren't endorsing this theology or taking sides on it. We are just looking objectively at a highly specific set of prophecies.
We're drawing from detailed texts that outline their interpretations of biblical passages.
Specifically, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and Matthew chapter 24, I believe.
Correct. And we'll be cross-referencing those texts with modern, real-world geopolitical events.
Because whether you share this worldview or not, understanding how millions of people interpret global events through this lens, it provides a fascinating study in theology and human perspective.
It really does. It fundamentally changes the way a person consumes the news.
Okay, let's unpack this. If we're looking at their timeline, the very first step isn't some far-off sci-fi future, right?
No, not at all.
It is the chaotic world we are living in right now. Like, in this theological framework, bad news is actually an expected prerequisite.
Yeah, the sources point specifically to Jesus' prophecy in Matthew chapter 24.
Right.
He foretold a period marked by wars, famines, earthquakes, pestilences, increasing lawlessness, and global anxiety.
Which sounds pretty familiar.
Exactly. If we look at the observable trends documented in the texts for the 2024 to 2026 period, the parallels they draw are just incredibly stark.
Yeah, the sources lay out a brutal list. We're talking about the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, the expanding Israel-Hamas conflict,
The simmering military tensions in the South China Sea.
yes, and the civil war in Sudan. And, the list goes way beyond human conflict, too.
Right, there's the economic side.
Exactly. Economic instability, like inflation, debt crises, supply chain breakdowns. And then you add health threats, from the lingering effects of COVID-19 to new outbreaks like bird flu and Mpox, plus relentless climate disasters with record heat waves, floods, and fires.
When the average person looks at those events, the natural response is intense anxiety about global security, right?
Oh, 100%.
But this theology, however, views these exact events as the direct fulfillment of that Matthew 24 prophecy.
Wow.
And there's a vital metaphor used in the text to describe this era. These events are referred to as the beginning of pangs of distress.
Pangs of distress.
Yeah, it directly compares global suffering to a pregnant woman experiencing birth pains.
So essentially it's like they are looking at the news with a decoder ring.
That's a great way to put it.
To most people, the headlines are just a source of despair. But with this decoder ring, the headlines are a confirmed symptom that a timeline is right on track.
Yes, exactly.
And that birth pain metaphor is really telling. Think about how contractions work.
Right, they escalate.
Yeah, they don't just happen randomly. They start out spaced apart, but they get noticeably stronger, more painful, and closer together the closer you get to the actual delivery.
Right.
It implies that the pain is, well, productive. It's leading to an inevitable conclusion.
The idea that the suffering is productive is central to their outlook. And what's crucial to understand is that alongside this global distress, there is another mandatory symptom that must be fulfilled.
Which is what?
The preaching of the good news. The sources note that Jehovah's Witnesses are currently active in over 240 lands.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this fulfills a requirement in their theology that this specific message must be preached in all the inhabited earth before the end comes.
So they are actively walking out into all of this global chaos in over 240 countries, specifically to tell people about the timeline.
Exactly.
But because these are just the birth pangs, the witnesses believe we are not yet at the actual end.
Right. We are not at the end yet.
The world is highly unstable, leaders are openly admitting it, and the contractions are just getting closer together.
Which brings us to the great paradox of this entire belief system.
Okay.
We've established that chaos is the baseline expectation. But the catalyst that actually pulls the trigger on the end of the world is not a nuclear war.
Wait, it's not?
No. It's not a natural disaster either. It is a sudden, unified declaration of global peace.
Here's where it gets really interesting. You're saying the peak of human achievement and optimism is actually the ultimate trap.
What's fascinating here is how the text points to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 2 and 3.
Okay, what does that say?
It says that Jehovah's day comes exactly as a thief in the night, right? When people are saying peace and security.
Peace and security.
Yes. But the sources are careful to clarify this isn't just everyday people hoping for peace.
Right.
It has to be a specific, coordinated, overconfident declaration by world political leaders claiming they have finally solved humanity's biggest problems.
Interesting.
Yeah. The literature anticipates a moment, likely spearheaded by the United Nations or a similar global body, where leaders point to a massive disarmament.
Or like a historic global treaty.
Exactly. Or a sudden resolution to a major crisis. And they proudly declare to the world, we did it. We have achieved lasting peace.
I have to push back on the plausibility of that.
Fair enough.
Because we just listed off the massive catalog of global chaos and deep political division.
So we did, yeah.
You're telling me that world leaders who cannot agree on a single trade policy or border dispute right now in 2026 are suddenly going to hold a unified press conference saying they've solved war and poverty.
That is the expectation, yes.
It feels like a classic horror movie trope, you know?
How do you mean?
Like, the characters have been running from the monster all night. They finally lock the cabin door, drop their weapons, and sigh, okay, we're safe.
Oh, I see.
And that exact moment of relief is when the monster drops from the ceiling.
That illusion of safety triggering the trap is exactly how the theology frames it.
Wow.
But your skepticism about world leaders suddenly agreeing is actually addressed in a specific refinement the theology made back in 2004.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The texts acknowledge that this declaration might not come completely out of nowhere. They refer to a pushing process.
A pushing process.
Right, referencing the king of the north and the king of the south from the book of Daniel.
Wait, let's unpack that. The king of the north and south. Who are these kings in the Modish context?
So, in their theological framework, these kings represent a historical continuum of rival global superpowers constantly vying for dominance.
Okay.
It's essentially an ongoing geopolitical tug of war. The texts suggest that the intense friction and pushing between these modern superpowers creates such a loud, dangerous buildup of tension.
Right.
That when a resolution is finally brokered, the resulting cry of peace and security is deafening.
Oh, I get it.
The sudden destruction doesn't mean the political buildup is invisible. It means the disastrous consequence strikes instantly while the leaders are mid-boast.
Like the thief in the night. You might know your neighborhood has a crime problem, but you don't know the exact second the thief is going to kick in your front door.
Precisely.
And, you mentioned the United Nations earlier. The sources use some incredibly intense, highly specific language for the UN.
They do, yes.
It is not viewed as a genuine force for peace. It's seen as a worldly confederacy against Jehovah.
The historical and symbolic role of the UN in Watchtower literature is essential context here.
Mm-hmm.
The theology does not view human governments as capable of bringing true peace.
Yeah, the texts actually call the UN the image of the wild beast from Revelation chapter 13
Right.
and the scarlet-colored wild beast of Revelation 17. Why those specific terrifying terms? Like, what do the beasts actually represent?
Well, in the book of Revelation, beasts are traditionally interpreted as representing human political systems or empires.
Okay.
The global political system as a whole is viewed as a wild beast. The UN is referred to as the image of that beast because it is a reflection.
Like a mirror.
More like a man-made copy attempting to represent the combined power of all those global governments.
Oh, I see.
And the term scarlet-colored points to its conspicuous nature and its claim to a divine or royal authority that, according to this theology, it does not actually possess.
Wow, so it's setting up the UN as a counterfeit savior. And what adds a whole other layer to this trap is the role of religious leaders. The texts refer to them as the clergy of Christendom,
Yes.
and they predict these leaders will wholeheartedly endorse this political cry of peace.
They will, yeah.
The literature draws a direct historical parallel to 1919, when prominent clergy hailed the newly formed League of Nations as the political expression of the kingdom of God on earth.
Right, and the expectation is that this future peace and security cry will receive an even more enthusiastic religious backing.
So the political leaders and the religious leaders will be fully united in this moment of self-congratulation.
Completely united, yes.
So if the political powers have just unified with the religious leaders to declare world peace, what shatters that alliance?
That's the pivot.
We transition into the sequence of what the texts call the Great Tribulation, what is the very first thing to be destroyed. Because surprisingly, it isn't the physical earth.
No, it's not.
And it isn't a war between nations.
Phase 1 of the sudden destruction is entirely unexpected by the world. It is the sudden eradication of an entity referred to as Babylon the Great.
Why Babylon? Babylon was an ancient city in Mesopotamia. How does a modern political system destroy an ancient city?
Well, Babylon the Great is a symbolic name used in Revelation.
Okay.
Historically, the ancient city of Babylon was the ultimate enemy of God's ancient people, Israel, and was known for exporting complex, false religious ideas.
I see.
In this theology, Babylon the Great represents the modern global empire of all false religion.
All of it.
Yes, this includes every church, temple, mosque, and religious organization worldwide that does not worship Jehovah.
Wow. The texts claim that the political powers, the UN, that scarlet-colored beast, will suddenly turn on the religious institutions that previously rode upon them for power and influence.
Exactly.
It's like a parasitic relationship suddenly reversing.
Right.
The host organism, the governments, suddenly decides the parasite, the religious institutions, is no longer useful and just aggressively purges it.
The text says the political systems will hate the harlot and completely burn her with fire.
The speed and brutality of this betrayal are central to the prophecy.
They really are.
I want to pause and reflect on the sheer scale of what is being described here.
It's massive.
Think about what that actually looks like on the ground. You're telling me the Vatican, Mecca, massive evangelical megachurches in the United States, historic temples across Asia.
All of them.
The texts claim all of these deeply entrenched institutions are simultaneously seized, stripped of their wealth, and dismantled by the state.
Yes.
That is an unfathomable logistical and cultural shift.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it would be the most profound paradigm shift in human history.
Truly.
The average person would watch seemingly untouchable, historically foundational global institutions just vanish overnight.
Unbelievable.
And the crucial question is why the political powers do this. It isn't just a political miscalculation or a sudden surge of secularism.
What is it then?
According to the theology, specifically referencing Revelation 17:17, God actually puts it into their hearts to carry out his thought.
That is a staggering detail. God uses the political beast as his own executioner to judge global religion.
Yes, that's the belief.
So it's a divinely orchestrated eviction. And while this entire global political purge of religion is happening, what are the Jehovah's Witnesses doing?
According to the texts, they do absolutely nothing to participate.
Wait, they just watch?
Yes. They expect this event to happen, so they are not shocked by the destruction of these religious institutions. They remain entirely peaceful observers while the political state carries out this purge.
Okay, so global religion has been completely eradicated. The political machine has asserted total dominance and eliminated all ideological rival.
All except one.
Right. The narrative moves to the only remaining group outside this new unified political consensus, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the ones who just stood by and watched. How does a newly empowered global government handle a group that refuses to assimilate?
This brings us to phase 2 of the Great Tribulation. The attack by Gog of Magog.
Gog of Magog.
Yes. With false religion gone, the political systems turn their crosshairs on the Jehovah's Witnesses. They view this unified, peaceful, great crowd as the final, stubborn obstacle to a completely united human society.
The name Gog of Magog gets introduced here, and the text equates Gog with Satan. But why that specific unusual name?
The name originates from the book of Ezekiel in the Hebrew Bible.
Okay.
Historically, Magog was a literal ancient land,
Sure.
and Gog was its hostile ruler who marshaled an overwhelming coalition to attack God's people.
So it's a parallel.
Yes, in this modern prophetic framework, it is symbolic. Gog of Magog represents Satan in his degraded, restricted state, marshaling a vast modern coalition of nations for one final, desperate assault on the true worshippers.
It is painted as a completely hopeless standoff. You have a coordinated global attack by the combined political and military might of the entire world, focused entirely on a single group of people.
A group that explicitly refuses to pick up a weapon or fight back.
Right. They are totally defenseless.
It is the ultimate test of faith within their theology. And the sources clarify that it's only when the nations actually move to destroy this defenseless group that the situation escalates from tribulation to destruction.
Wow.
The attack on the witnesses is what triggers God's direct response. Which leads us to the climax of the narrative. Phase 3, Armageddon.
We really need to define this because the word Armageddon gets thrown around in pop culture to mean basically any big disaster, right?
Oh, definitely.
Like a meteor hitting the Earth or a massive climate collapse or zombies.
The text makes a critical distinction here. Armageddon is not World War III.
Okay.
It is not humans fighting humans with nuclear weapons or drone swarms. It is defined strictly as the war of the great day of God the Almighty.
So it's not a human war at all.
No, it is God's direct supernatural intervention to save his people.
So what does this all mean? The cinematic scale of this sequence is mind-bending.
It really is.
You go from this geopolitical maneuvering peace treaties, the UN seizing religious assets, a global military coalition closing into a sudden supernatural rescue at the absolute last possible second.
Exactly.
Just as the world's armies are about to wipe them out, Jesus Christ and an army of angels step in.
Yes.
And they don't use conventional weapons. The text references Ezekiel 38.22, saying the political systems and armies were destroyed with pestilence, hailstones, and fire from heaven.
The destruction is total. God dismantles the political, military, and commercial systems that opposed him.
Wow.
No human opponent survives this intervention. But the most defining aspect of this theology is the outcome for the believers. The great crowd of Jehovah's Witnesses physically survives this climax.
They don't get raptured.
No, they do not.
They don't die and float up to heaven. The sources emphasize that they literally walk out of the tribulation alive in their physical bodies, stepping into a ruined earth.
Yes.
While the entire satanic system of human governments, corrupt commerce, and false religion has just been completely crushed.
Consider the psychological weight of that belief. This raises an important question. How does an individual live their daily life, going to work, raising children, paying a mortgage, with the absolute conviction that this massive, sudden, total global reset could trigger at any moment?
That is heavy. You can't just pause your life sitting on your porch waiting for the sky to open up.
No, you can't.
The literature addresses this tension heavily, doesn't it? The texts from the 1990s and 2000s deeply emphasize a wait-and-see approach.
Yes, they explicitly caution their followers against setting dates.
Right.
While earlier literature, particularly in the 1970s and 80s, occasionally fostered intense speculation around specific years like the UN's 1986 International Year of Peace, the more recent articles firmly established that believers must wait patiently.
Okay.
This stance is rooted deeply in Matthew 24.36, which states, "Concerning that day and hour, nobody knows, but only the Father."
So you can't point to a specific UN resolution on the news and say, this is it, grab your go bag. You simply have to be spiritually ready at all times. And there's another fascinating biblical comparison they use to describe this specific current waiting period, isn't there? The days of Noah.
The days of Noah is a profoundly fitting parallel for their worldview.
How so?
The text explains that before the global flood, people were just eating, drinking, marrying, going about their normal daily routines.
Just living life.
Right. They were completely ignoring Noah's warnings, likely viewing him as a fanatic, building a massive boat on dry land, right up until the day he entered the ark and the flood swept them away.
The theology teaches that today's world is in exactly that same state of oblivious normalcy. The masses are completely unaware of the prophetic timeline ticking down in the background, and the believers accept that, much like Noah, their preaching work makes them look incredibly strange to the rest of the world.
It highlights the extreme cognitive dissonance between the believer and the general public. They're occupying the same physical world, but living in entirely different realities.
And this is exactly why doing a deep dive into the source material is so valuable for you, the listener.
Absolutely.
Because when you understand this intricate framework, the beasts, Babylon the Great, the birth pangs, you suddenly understand how millions of people around the world are processing the exact same terrifying news headlines that you are reading.
It completely flips the script on how we interpret global events.
Yes, it really does.
In this paradigm, bad news wars, earthquakes, pandemics is not a reason to fall into despair. It is a sign of progress.
It is empirical evidence that the timeline is moving forward.
Exactly. And conversely, what the rest of the world would consider the ultimate good news, a massive breakthrough in world peace, is actually the final warning siren.
It is an incredible psychological flip, and it brings us right back to where we started. We talked about how you make sense of the chaos in the headlines today.
Right.
But I want to leave you with a different hypothetical based on everything we've just uncovered in these texts. Think about this. If you woke up tomorrow morning, checked your phone, and saw that world leaders had just announced they had signed a permanent global peace treaty, effectively ending all wars, all poverty, and all international conflicts forever.
A miracle, basically.
Right. Would your very first instinct be to celebrate human ingenuity? Or would you look over your shoulder wondering if it's a trap?